August 21, 1944. Dawn breaks over the rolling fields east of Chambois, Normandy, where the air hangs heavy with the acrid stench of cordite, burning rubber, and decaying flesh. Smoke curls lazily from the twisted wrecks of vehicles strewn across the narrow roads and orchards like the discarded toys of a wrathful giant. In the midst of this carnage, a group of weary German officers, high-ranking survivors of the shattered Seventh Army, stand in stunned silence beside a captured crossroads. Their uniforms are mud-caked, their faces gaunt from days without proper rest or rations. Before them stretches an endless sea of American trucks, gleaming GMC CCKW 2.5-tonners, Dodges, and Studebakers, many still laden with crates of ammunition, fuel cans, and rations, abandoned only because their drivers pressed forward too swiftly to wait. This moment marks the final sealing of what the Germans called the Kessel von Falaise, the Falaise Pocket. For weeks, Allied forces had maneuvered to encircle Army Group B, the backbone of German defenses in Normandy. What began as a desperate retreat after the American breakout in Operation Cobra had devolved into a nightmare of encirclement. By mid-August, Canadian and Polish armored divisions pressed from the north, while American armies under General Omar Bradley swung up from the south, closing the gap at Chambois. The pocket, no more than 20 kilometers wide at its narrowest, trapped remnants of 15 divisions, over 100,000 men, hundreds of tanks, and thousands of vehicles. Allied aircraft dominated the skies, turning the escape routes into corridors of death. Typhoons and thunderbolts swooped low, rockets and bombs shattering columns in relentless waves. On the ground, artillery from British, Canadian, and American batteries pounded the trapped forces without mercy. German commanders had long prided themselves on the precision and resilience of their armored spearheads, the panzer divisions that had conquered Europe in blitzkrieg triumphs. They expected the Allies, particularly the Americans, to falter under the strain of extended supply lines, bogged down by the bocage hedgerows and fuel shortages that plagued any advancing army. In their calculations, the Western Allies lacked the ruthless efficiency of the Wehrmacht. Their armies were seen as amateurish, over-reliant on material excess rather than tactical brilliance. Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge, commanding Army Group B until his recall and subsequent suicide, had clung to hopes of a counteroffensive at Mortain, believing it could blunt the American thrust and restore mobility. Even as the pocket tightened, many officers anticipated that Allied caution, fears of overextension or friendly fire, would leave an escape corridor open long enough for organized withdrawal. Yet the reality unfolded with crushing inevitability. What the Germans encountered was not hesitation, but an avalanche of mobility and sustenance. As the pocket collapsed, retreating columns were forced to abandon their own vehicles, fuel-starved Opel Blitz trucks, half-tracks, and horse-drawn wagons, while American forces surged forward in seemingly exhaustible convoys. Post-battle surveys revealed the scale. In the northern sector alone, German losses included 344 tanks and armored vehicles, 2,447 soft-skinned trucks and cars, and 252 artillery pieces, most abandoned or destroyed. Overall estimates placed German vehicle losses in the thousands, with entire divisions reduced to skeletal remnants. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, once a formidable force of over 20,000 men and hundreds of tanks, emerged with fewer than 300 combatants and a handful of vehicles. Captured German officers, surveying the battlefield in the days that followed, fixated on one recurring sight: the American truck. Row upon row of them lined the roads, sturdy, standardized, mass-produced wonders like the GMC CCKW, nicknamed the Deuce and a Half. These vehicles, churned out by American factories in the hundreds of thousands, embodied a logistical philosophy alien to the resource-strapped Reich. German mechanics inspecting captured examples near the pocket marveled at the interchangeable parts, the robust yet simple design optimized for wartime volume. One supply officer, formerly employed at the Opel Works, calculated grimly: American divisions fielded thousands of such trucks each, supporting rapid advances without pause. In contrast, the Wehrmacht relied on a patchwork of captured vehicles, limited domestic production, and millions of horses, over 3 million across all fronts, to haul supplies. The American truck became the symbol of inexhaustible abundance, rolling forward in convoys that dwarfed anything the Germans could muster, fueled by vast petroleum reserves at an industrial base untouched by bombs. Factual records underscore the disparity. By August 1944, the U.S. Army in Europe operated fleets bolstered by domestic production and reverse lend-lease, delivering millions of gallons of fuel and tons of supplies daily. Operations like the Red Ball Express, mobilizing over 6,000 trucks, would soon sustain the pursuit across France. German reports from the Pocket spoke of columns immobilized by air attacks and fuel shortages, crews abandoning vehicles that could not be repaired or refueled. General Dwight Eisenhower, touring the site shortly after, described a landscape where one could walk hundreds of yards stepping only on dead flesh and wreckage. Allied investigators confirmed minimal armored kills from air power alone, only 11 proven, but trucks fell in droves, one-third directly to bombs and rockets, the rest to abandonment under the unrelenting threat. For the German High Command, this confrontation shattered lingering illusions. Officers who had dismissed American forces as materially lavish but strategically crude now confronted the truth that lavishness was the strategy. The endless trucks represented not mere transport, but the lifeblood of a democratic industrial giant capable of outproducing the Axis by orders of magnitude. Memoirs and interrogations reveal a profound shift. Senior figures like General Heinrich Eberbauch, commanding the 5th Panzer Army remnants, grappled with the realization that Germany's war economy, strained by bombing and resource shortages, could never match this output. The sight of pristine American vehicles amid German ruin forced a reevaluation. The Western War was no longer winnable, for no amount of tactical skill could overcome such material superiority. In the weeks that followed, as survivors limped across the Seine, perhaps 40,000 escaping but stripped of heavy equipment, the transformation deepened. Divisions that entered Normandy, elite and fully equipped, emerged as shadows, reliant on foot marches and scavenged transport. The ideological edifice of National Socialist invincibility cracked further. Soldiers and officers alike whispered of the impossible odds against an enemy that fought not with fanatical zeal alone, but with factories that never slept. The American truck endures as the recurring emblem of that abundance, a sturdy, unpretentious machine, rolling tirelessly through mud and fire, carrying the tools of victory in boundless supply. It symbolized the freedom of a nation whose assembly lines turned peacetime prosperity into wartime might, where innovation and scale served the cause of liberation. In the quiet reflection that history demands, the fields of Falaise whisper a larger truth. Amid the wreckage of ambition and ideology, the unbroken flow of those trucks reminds us that freedom's greatest strength lies not in defiance alone, but in the capacity to sustain it, in abundance shared, in resources marshaled for justice, in a society that builds not just weapons, but the means to end wars swiftly and decisively. What broke the generals at Falaise was not merely defeat, but the glimpse of a world where material plenty underpinned human liberty, rendering tyranny's rigid scarcities obsolete forever.